Yo, what's going on, boys? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to the Steam 2 video. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a build for the Grandmaster NIGHTFALL, this time for the Warlock. So the GM started this week, and they started with a spicy weapon and a very anticipated weapon, the Palindrome. So I know a lot of you guys are going to be going in there, so this is the perfect build for anyone that's just getting into the Grandmaster NIGHTFALLs. Whether you're new or somebody that regularly does Grandmaster NIGHTFALLs, this build is going to be pretty good for you. With this build, you're going to be able to stop every single champion, have a bunch of ad clear, have some survivability, and also have some support for your teammates as well. So you're going to be able to pretty much do everything that you would want in an end game activity just with this build. So no matter what kind of teammates you're running to LFG, you're always going to be able to get a completion and secure that loot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you do, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel in case you guys aren't already for some more builds. And now let's get into it, and first we're going to start with our exotics. And today it looks like we're going to be starting with an exotic piece of armor. Now the exotic that we're going to be running on this build is the Rancled Raiment, and this thing just supercharges our stasis turret. It gives it more range, it also spawns stasis crystals around it, and whenever we're standing in the middle of it, it also gives our weapons some freeze and slow abilities. But with this build, we're never really going to be using that last part. We really just want it for the increased range of the turret, so it can hit things that are a lot farther away, and also for the stasis crystals that spawn up around it, to give us a bit more ad clear, and also to be able to freeze even more targets, since they're constantly spawning over and over again, and every time that they spawn, they freeze everything around them. Overall, just think of it as an improved Bleak Watcher, but we're basically going to be playing with it just like you play with a normal Bleak Watcher. Just kind of throw it in the middle of enemies, and just kind of setting it there. Next, we're actually going to be taking a look at the subclass. We're going to leave the weapons for a little bit later, because the subclass is really what matters, and the thing that we're mostly going to be taking advantage of. So first of all, your super, I actually recommend that you go with the Song Flame. This thing is still just crazy in endgame PvE content. It can be your oh shit button. Whenever things start going bad, you can use pop it and make sure that you stay alive. You can use it to save a teammate or save a run. In case both of your teammates go down, you can just quickly pop your super and go revive them. Or you can just use it for damage or for just clearing a room. There's so many things that you can do with Song Flame, and you're basically unkillable in it. It is very hard to get killed in the Song of Flame. You're gonna be tanking so much damage. So I just love it, and it just works really well with the build. Now for our abilities, I recommend that you go with the Healing Rift, just because a lot of times right now, as the current meta, a lot of Titans are just kind of standing behind their barriers, and to keep them safe, you could just put down a Healing Rift behind the barrier, and also just kind of sit there and just enjoy the free bolt charge. For your melee, you want to go with the Arcane Needle. You get 3 charges, you can use it fairly often. And this actually works really well with one of the mods in the artifact, which makes it whenever we unravel a target and do some damage to them, they spawn some Threatlings. Threatlings are not really a big part of the build, and they're just kind of like a bonus on top, so might as well use it. Now for your grenade, I recommend that you go with the Healing Grenade. It's the lowest charging grenade, so you can actually get it back really quickly, and also there's a couple of times where you might actually want to use your grenade to heal allies, like if someone's getting farmed over and over again. Maybe because they just take damage right away, you can just quickly throw the grenade down and keep them alive. Or if you need the grenade in a tough situation, you could always just heal yourself with it. But most of the time you are just going to be using the grenade to spawn more turrets. But it's a nice opportunity to have that you can actually use it to save yourself or one of your teammates. Now for our first aspect, of course we have the Bleak Watcher, since that's the main thing on the build that we're running. Now this is going to give us so many different things. It gives a ton of Darkness Transcendence energy, so you can use spam Transcendence a lot with this build. It's going to be able to stun champions, both Unstoppables and Overloads, very easily. It gives us a ton of crowd control, also with the slows and freezes. And it even gives us some ad clear just by itself with all the random crystals that it spawns around the Bleak Watcher. So always try to throw this essentially in like the middle of enemies, or in a place where you know it's going to hit enemies. And with the extended range that the turret actually has, it can actually reach people a lot farther than you would expect. It is amazing, and if you thought the Bleak Watcher was good already, just wait till you see this Bleak Watcher. And for our second aspect, we are going to have Feed the Void, and this is what's going to give us a lot of survivability. Whenever we defeat a target with an ability, it will activate Devour, and whenever we have Devour, any kills that we get will heal us, as well as give us grenade energy. So this is both going to keep us alive, as well as give us some more grenade energy, so we can spam more turrets. So you definitely want to get some kills with your abilities to get this going, whether it's with your melee, with your Transcendence grenades, or a lot of times the turret itself, the Bleak Watcher, will proc this especially when it breaks some of the crystals around and things tied to the crystal damage, because that will also proc Devour since it counts as ability damage. So there's a lot of things that we actually have on this build that will proc this, and a lot of times just throwing the Bleak Watcher in the middle of enemies could be enough to just proc it and let you have Devour. But you definitely want to have this up as much as possible for that free grenade energy and the extra survivability. Now for the fragments, speaking of survivability, our first one is the Faceted Protection. While we're surrounded by combatants, we are more resistant to incoming damage. It is 15% at base, and whenever we activate our Transcendence, it turns into 25% damage resistance. This is gonna be pretty good, especially when things start to get a little bit closer. Having a little bit extra damage resistance is definitely gonna be very good for us. After that, we're gonna have the Facet of Solitude. Whenever we land some rapid precision hits, it emits a Severing Blast from the target, and when we're Transcendent, Death Severing Blast is bigger, so it can hit more targets. The ability is really good, it has some synergy with some of the artifact mods, and it's also very easy to proc. All you have to do is just hit a couple precision hits. It's one of my favorite fragments, and it's pretty useful in pretty much any endgame content. After that, we're gonna have the Faceted Command. Whenever we freeze or suppress a target, it will reload our equipped weapon, and it also increases weapon stability, aim assist, and airborne effectiveness. We mostly have this for the auto reload, especially whenever you are using the turrets against champions. That is really good, and it pretty much guarantees that you're able to melt the champion very quickly. It also has a secondary effect, which makes it so whenever you defeat frozen targets, you get stasis shards, and those are going to give you some melee energy. So those are also kind of useful, but it's definitely not like the main thing that we're using this for. It's just the cherry on top. After that, we're going to have the Facet of Dawn, and this is going to give us Radiant whenever we do some melee hits against targets, or if we get some melee kills, it will make us and our teammates Radiant as well. This is really good since we have 3 melees on this build, so we can actually activate this fairly often, and the Radiant buff is pretty nice at a 20% damage increase, so this can definitely help at taking down some of the bigger targets or some of the champions. On the final fragment, we actually had the wrong one, so we actually had to switch it. It's going to be the Facet of Devotion. Whenever we defeat targets that are affected by stasis or strand debuffs, we gain bonus like Transcendence energy. This is used so we can spam Transcendence even more. We're already going to be getting tons of Darkness Transcendence energy with our turret, with our melees, so we definitely want to have a bit more light, just so we can spam it a lot more often, and this kind of gives us that. So with this build, we're actually going to be getting Transcendence very quick, so make sure that you use it as much as you can. Try to alternate Transcendence on your super as much as you can, just so you can just really get the most out of all these ability spamming that we're going to be doing. Now moving on to the weapons, the very first one you want to go for is going to be the Tanisha's Mastery. This thing is crazy this season. You pretty much have a weapon that can stun all 3 champions at once. So I hope all of you guys got a Chill Clip one, and if you didn't, you could also use run a Chill Clip Fusion Rifle for a similar effect, but the Tanisha's is just so much better. For your heavy, I recommend the Machine Gun so you can deal with the Overload champions, but if you're watching this in a week that's not Overload, then you go with a Fusion Rifle instead, with a Linear Fusion Rifle. And then for your energy weapon, you're actually going to have a lot of different choices, especially if Tanisha's and your heavy weapon are already taking care of the champions. You're going to have so many choices in this slot, but the one that I like the most and the one that you're going to be seeing in the background, but my favorite one definitely has to be the Vet's Subclass. It's like the perfect season for this weapon. It's a Fusion Rifle, so you can take advantage of particle deconstruction, so it can actually melt things very quickly. And the linear mode on this thing does some crazy damage against some of the champions. It's been getting buffed over and over again to the point where you can pretty much 3-shot any champion with the linear mode. It is insane the amount of damage it can actually put out, and it's just something that a primary weapon can do. But I know not everyone has the Vet's Subclass, so here's a couple of other really good options as well for some of your exotic primaries. You have Lemonarch that has built-in Overload. You have Polaris Lance, which doesn't really have like built-in champion mods. Those ignitions can stop the Unstoppables. You have Graviton Lance, which is just good all around. You have the brand new Trace Rifle, the Lone Star, which can stun Overloads. And you also have things like the Centrifuge that can stun Unstoppables and are also pretty good this season since it's an arc weapon. So you have lots of different choices, but for sure, if you have the Vets, give the Vets a try please. It is just so good, but any of those weapons will work. Now moving on to the artifact, in this first row, you just want to put on the weapons that you're using. Since we have a Fusion, a Sidearm, and a Machine Gun, we have Fusion, Sidearm, Machine Gun. Now for the second row, I have Overcloak and Load, since I do have an Arc Machine Gun, but it's not something that you have to have all the time. Disruption Spike is going to be pretty good with this build since it just improves the damage reduction that we get. So instead of the enemies losing 40% damage, they actually lose 50% damage, making them even less dangerous. Horse Shoto is actually the mod that I was talking about when I was talking about the Arcane Needle. Whenever we unravel targets, whenever we do some damage with the weapon, it's going to spawn threatlings, giving us a bit more extra damage. Both Dielectric and Flashover are also going to be really good if you have arc weapons, but if you don't, then don't worry about these ones. Same with the Void ones. Volatile Marksman, Malignant Harvest, and Void Floods are also really good, but only if you actually have Void weapons. Dreadful Finisher is definitely something you want to have on all the time though, since every time that you finish champions, it's guaranteed special ammo for you, as well as your teammates. If you went with the Vets, or any other fusion rifle, definitely Particle Deconstruction, something you want, and also the Defibrillating Blast is something that you always just want to have on every time there's any champions involved. Every time that you stun a champion, you're immediately going to get full stacks of bolt charge, and this is going to trigger an arc bolt that heals you, as well as jolt combatants. So overall, it's just positives for you stunning the champion. So this is something that's going to happen very often. If the champion has any enemies around them, they're just going to be a lot easier to kill when they're all jolted. And lastly, let's take a look at the mods that we have on this build. First of all, for your helmet, you want to go with Heavy Ammo Scout and Heavy Ammo Finder. Since we have the mod on the artifact to make special whenever we do finishers, we definitely want to focus on Heavy instead. And then you want to go with a Siphon so you can get some orbs with your primary weapon. And if you don't have enough points, if you can't use the Harmonic Siphon, then you could also get rid of that one. And then you're going to be able to use all of these over here. Might be a little selfish, but we'll be able to make it work. Now for the gauntlets, you want to go Grenade Kickstart so we can spam you more grenades. And also Impact Induction as well as Momentum Transfer so we can charge up both our melee and our grenade. For your chest piece, you just want to have your regular resistances. I always recommend that you go with a Concussive Dampener, and also with one of them that matches whatever the threat is. The threat this week is Arc, so that's why I have Arc Resist, and then I only had space for Harmonic Resistance. I could also go with Harmonic Reserves, but I decided to keep the Resistance instead. For the boots, there's nothing really special. We have Absolution, Orbs of Restoration, Recuperation, so we can heal with orbs, as well as get our abilities back whenever we pick up orbs. And lastly, for our Bond, we're going to have Bomber, Outreach, as well as Reaper, so we can make some more orbs, and also we can get our abilities back faster whenever we put our Rift down. And that's really going to be it. With that, that's actually going to be the end of the build, and now you guys pretty much know everything you need to know about this build, and now you can go into any GM and have a pretty good time. You can pretty much just throw the turret into the middle of enemies, and then you sit back and pick them off as they're being frozen. Remember to also break the crystals, since that will do also some melee damage, and it definitely helps out with just dealing with a bunch of enemies when the turret is right on them. It's so good, and you pretty much just want to throw it out as soon as you can, especially if you see a big group of enemies just kind of somewhere, just so it can just constantly freeze and slow them. And that's really the main part of the build. Everything else is not really something that you gotta think about. You kind of spam your abilities every time you have them, you use your Transcendence when you have it, and if things are going wrong, or you want to just clear things a little faster, pop your super, and you're going to be going off on whatever is in front of you. It is really just an amazing build that can pretty much get anyone through a GM. So I hope that you guys end up liking it, and that you guys give it a try. And if you guys do, make sure you guys come back here and tell me how it went. Do you liked it? Do you not liked it? Do you end up making some changes? Because I do encourage that you guys change something around if it's not working for you, or maybe you just have a different playstyle. But regardless, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, thank you for stopping by, and good luck with your GMs. Peace.